Teams Talk, where caring is the cause. I'm Shayla, president of the Bray Applications and co-creator of HomeTeams, and I am joined by Steve, our head coach, and as we like to call him, visionary. Just a wave.
I always wonder about the visionary front. We're really in trouble if I'm the visionary.
Yes. No, we're not in trouble. So we always start off an episode with some sunshine. What sunshine do you have for us today?
I had a really neat one because it's kind of has to do with HomeTeams in a way. It's and I look at it to make sure I remember the names, but it's a group called Belong. It's a nonprofit, and they actually work with another group called Ready Generations. It's over in London, and what's neat about it, and you'll relate to this, Tammy, is that they start doing research of taking children daycare to Alzheimer's patients, and actually kind of combining the Alzheimer's patients and the daycare. And it's kind of neat because to me, it's what we've been saying about multi-generational families and how important that fourth generation is, and how if you're still on this earth, God's got a reason for you to be on this earth, and you can contribute. What they find is that the Alzheimer's patients are much happier, and that they're looking forward to it. You know, some of the things that they talk about, and I've tried this myself, and it's pretty neat, where they'll be ready for it. Like they might not remember this, remember that, but they're like, when is the children going to be here? That's and
cool.
And they have a tendency to remember the children's names better. There's lots of neat things that start happening, but the kids love it, and these older people love it. And I think it's just a neat research proving how important that fourth generation is. And it's cool to find out that people around the world are on the cutting edge of doing this kind of thing. So that's the good news today.
That's awesome. Where was that taking place?
In the UK.
Okay, awesome.
We do a lot of advanced stuff that we don't.
Yeah, sometimes.
Awesome. On today's episode, we're joined by Tammy Deery, a registered nurse and home care aide trainer, who brings invaluable expertise to the realm of in-home care. With over 15 years of nursing experience, Tammy has dedicated the majority of her career to serving the in-home care community. She's an expert on case management and state evaluations. Besides her professional career in caring, Tammy has also experienced being the primary caregiver at 2 different times in her life, and brings a lot of wisdom when it comes to providing care for the ones you love most. Welcome, Tammy.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Glad to be here.
We're excited to hear a lot about your personal story, but before we get into that, can you give us some more information on what your role as the home care aide trainer, what that means and what it is?
Sure. So as a home care aide or HCA trainer, which is what I do, I teach the students kind of the whole continuum, like from what expectations are, from taking care of individuals, all the way to respecting, showing dignity, personal space, person-centered. So we're trying to get our home care aides to understand that they, despite their needs and maybe even their memory, they still deserve to have respect and dignity as we're taking care of them.
Oh, I love that. That ties in a lot to your fourth quarter mentality, right? It's that, end of life, people are always like, put grandma away. You always talk about that. And what I love most is the dignity side of it. And that really ties into a lot of what we've talked about before, which is they just want to have that connection with somebody, and you're providing that with that training. That's really cool, Tammy.
I'm hoping they're taking that away.
I'm sure they are. I'm sure they are.
And so much more. I mean, Tammy's really humble about it, but I've got to be around Tammy for the last years. I don't know how many years now. Been a while, but she's the go-to expert in so many areas. And when I say go-to expert, it is so hard in this area to find who to go to. It's like you'll hear different opinions. You can go out there and Google all you want to Google, and you'll find exact opposite opinions on certain situations. And dealing with the ins and outs of even sometimes the law, or sometimes how to deal with insurance companies, and then right down to the basic, because she's such a good nurse, how do you get a person to stand up? How do you do these different things that can really help the senior? She's really, for us, is one of our real go-to people.
Yeah. Well, and you used her personally. I know there was several times, between your mom and dad, that you actually reached out and you're like, Tammy, how can I get this set up for the home, or even a lot of the regulations like you were talking about?
Yeah, that's yeah, I have. And it's been amazing. Just, you can say one word and make a whole difference. And that's what's so interesting about this world, is that you're out there and you're you're going at it, and somebody will tell you. And I remember a situation with Tammy where it was with my dad, and it was at a facility I won't name, but the facility was like, well, okay, your dad has to be out today, and dad was, had vascular dementia and was having some tough times, and they were like, you got to have him out here by noon. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I can't even, I'm at work. I'm trying to figure it all out. How do I get over there to get him out at noon? And what do you have to do? And so I called Tammy, and Tammy's like, no, they can't do that to you. And here's why. And this is what you have to say. You have to just say this, and it'll change how their attitude is. And then I go there and I say, okay, you're not discharging him today, and here's why. And the whole attitude changed from one little thing that Tammy said. And that's why with HomeTeams, the library we talk about all the time that has this expertise in there and access to people who have the expertise is huge for those people out there all by themselves. And I think of it like in that situation, my dad did have me, and didn't just have me. We had a whole army of people who wanted to help dad. A team, yeah, a whole team. But there's a lot of people out there all by themselves. And there's the one caregiver who hasn't built their team yet, and maybe nobody in their team has any experience. And to be able to go into HomeTeams and find that experience and access to that experience is huge.
Yeah. I remember that day when you got the call and you called me. You're like, we have to do this. And I'm like, okay, I'll get all this stuff together. And you're panicked. And then about an hour later, you're like, I called Tammy. Yeah. We're all good. Dad can stay there. And I'm like, okay, good. Because I have nothing figured out for you, which was so beneficial because the impact, and again, like you said, you had that team, but still having you and having that resource and you knowing that stuff was such a big deal, especially at that time.
Yeah, well, I'm glad I was able to help because I feel like there's a lot of people out there, like Steve said, they're alone. They don't know even what their legal rights are.
Right.
The problem is when you first come in, you sign all these documents. Well, what you've done is you've signed your legal rights and you haven't even really had a chance to go through them and understand. And I had another client the same way. Time to get out. No. Can't happen. And even recently I had an aunt going through the same thing in Wenatchee, and they were trying to get her out. And I go, no, can't. It's not safe. There's nothing. You got to have a safe plan. You can't just leave. You cannot send somebody out the door without a safe plan.
Yeah, so let's talk about that.
Think about that right there.
Yeah,
I mean, how common sense that is. And when she said that to me, no, they have to have a safe plan of where he's going. And I'm like, they don't, do they? They're literally going to put him out. We're going to put him in his car, and we're going to take him somewhere. There's no plan. And the fact that a lot of people, we get mad at the government. We mad at Medicare or Medicaid. I got a chance to meet one of the ladies on the board of directors of Medicare. And she said, you do realize that us on this board and stuff, we care. And I was like, no one realizes that. She actually does really care. She was a wonderful, wonderful lady. But they do care. And some of these laws are in place to care, but we don't know it. And then a Tammy can step in and say, well, here's the rule. And there's people out there go, I don't even understand the difference between Medicare and Medicaid. And it's like, can I be in this facility? Can I be in that facility? And Tammy can go in and prove how they can get coverage, and it's invaluable.
No, it's I think what happens, like when we talk about the safe plan, you do have the right to appeal, and I don't think people understand that or even know that. And so then it has to go back to your Medicare, and they have to look at it and make some decisions. But in the meantime, your loved one is safe.
Yes.
And they can't there are some charges they could accrue to you, but they have to be kind of extra special charges, right? But they can be there safe, and why they're looking through this appeal process. And I don't think some people realize that. And that's both in a skilled nursing facility as well as in the hospital.
Yeah, I agree. You always say you don't know what you don't know. And I think that's really what a lot of people are facing right now is all of a sudden they already have this burden, right? And sometimes it's unexpected. Sometimes someone's healthy and then boom, it just hits. I know that you have experienced that personally too. It hits and all of a sudden you're in the middle of this chaos, this storm, and you kind of do feel alone. You're out. Most people do not understand how the medical industry works, how insurance works. how to even speak to a doctor or even understand some of what they're trying to say.
Right.
So now having kind of that sense of a very simple thing is where they're headed back safe.
Right.
That it's as simple as that. And to know that there's resources that can kind of help with that is a big deal. So
I want my loved ones safe. So that's,
Yeah.
that's the plan. And I'm sure all of them want their loved ones safe. You know, sometimes I feel like some people, my theory is until you've walked in somebody's shoes, you really don't know what that experience is like. And for some of these people, I know it's their job. I've done discharge planning in the hospitals, case management, discharge planning before I went into home health nursing. And so I know what that looks like. They probably want to fire me as the case manager because I was the one that says, but no, we don't have the resource. We can't let them go. Well, we got to get them out. You know, I mean, you know, I'm sad to say, but you know, they don't get paid if they don't have a reason, and everybody's trying to, you know, it's business.
Yeah.
I'll just say that.
It is business, and it's business intertwined with life. And, you know, and being bold enough, you know, one of the things that we do fairly well here, and we try to do with HomeTeams, I think much more than we even give respect to this, is being the patient advocate. And there's, you know, when you go to a hospital, they'll say, this is your patient advocate. And in reality, they, by the nature, like you said, of the business of it, is they are the hospital advocate. They are not the patient advocate. Although there's great people and they're trying their best to keep the understanding that they're trying to take care of the patient. So I'm not saying they're great people, but just in the way it's set up, they are the hospital advocate. And be able to step in there and say, no, you know, it is business, but right now it's personal. And slowing it down to take those seconds, and it's a huge difference. It really is. And then obviously with HomeTeams, the thing that Tammy and I, because we talk all the time about this, is getting to where, you know, when I wanted to take Dad home, for instance, and Tammy's like, you do understand it's going to cost you, I think it was like $9,000 to $12,000. We started adding it up to have 24-hour care, but we had to have a plan. So if we we're going to take him home, we had to have a plan to take him home. And when we started out, that's what it was costing, because we had to have 24/7 of nurses. But as the home team developed and as it came together, you know, I'm still just tickled to say is we got it down towards like $2,000 because of all the contributing people that were helping in the home team. So home teams did make a difference, not just in being the advocate, but giving the safe place to land. And it took times where I'd have to say, now, Tammy, is this safe? You know, and she'd say, well, is this person, can they do this? Can they do that? And we had to look at some of the more difficult things with Dad, and then Mom almost even more so, because we had to have 2-person transfer. We had, you know, these things that make it very, very difficult to do at home. But yes, we were capable of doing it, and we did it.
Yeah.
You know, not once, not twice. We've done it quite a few times now.
Which is very cool. So let's circle back around to someone is wanting to be part of a home team, or maybe just expand their knowledge because they are now in a position where they need to care for somebody, or that's the profession they want to go down. Mm-hmm. So what's the difference between this HCA and a CNA?
So an HCA is a home care aide. It's kind of the new, I don't want to say new in that sense, but it's kind of the middle thing now. So state of Washington has what they call an NAR, which is a nursing assistant registered. So it's an individual that registers, and many of them go into like the skilled nursing facilities, and then they work there, and then they work to hopefully get their CNA, or they can work in the hospital as an NAR, I believe, under, you know, certain rules and restrictions as they're progressing to get like their CNA. So what the state has done is they've kind of made this interim. It's called a home care aide. And they have to do a 75-hour course, which of that 75-hour course, it includes, at least in my program, I can't speak to everybody else, but it includes mental health as a curriculum, dementia as a curriculum, and then they have 16 hours of skills. So when we're talking about skills, we're talking about transferring, we're talking about bed bath, we're talking about peri-care, we're talking about oral care, shaving, walking clients. We're talking about all the skill sets that you would need to have to be able to take care of your loved one, you know, in the home. And that's kind of, I think, biggest thing that scares people. Like, how
definitely.
am I going to be able to do that? Because if it's your loved one, I mean, the HCA curriculum, as I mentioned before, talks about person-centered dignity and all that. But when it's your loved one, you don't really change how you feel about them that way. So you're going to do your communications and those kind of things. But it does give some understanding also in the curriculum to the value of skin, why these things, why oral care is important, why skin, taking care of doing good peri-care and turning people. And so we try to get to that. So we prevent a lot of these terrible situations from happening, particularly if you have if your loved one is bedbound, for example. So we don't want them to have skin breakdown and stuff like that. So we talk about all those good things. And so that home care aid is kind of designed to be like in the adult family home environment more so, or the in-home person that would come to somebody's home, whether they're paid or not paid, right? Or my thing is you never know what's going to happen in your life. And so as a wife or partner, to have that skill set for your loved one is super, super amazing, because you can absolutely feel comfortable about bringing your loved one home and being able to take care of them.
Yeah, that's something, Tammy, you and I have talked about before, but we're working really hard towards, is that we have a progression of classes, some of which we're hoping you're going to teach. But I've always wondered, not always, I guess it started a few years ago, is that why we're not taught those things and why they're not. I wish they were part of like high school curriculum. But there's people who want to care. And like I've said many times, like I've interviewed a ton of people on this area. And the number one reason why people don't want to take someone home is because they're intimidated.
Yes, absolutely.
And having these basic knowledges, all of a sudden they're not intimidated. It's the same way with somebody who learns CPR. All of a sudden you're not scared when something happens to somebody. And so we're trying to make sure we have the progression of these classes. And we're going to have them. We actually just cut a deal on the EMT side to go all the way to where a person, if they wanted to, they can become an EMT or even what we call a WEMT. They can go all the way through all this stuff to become what we think is the ultimate caregiver. And in those classes, I found this. I think I talked to you about this one time. I was taking care of a lady in a house, and her toilet didn't work. So I come and show up, and there's all these neat things that I thought I was going to be able to do for her, but her toilet didn't work. It's pretty hard to live by yourself with one bathroom that doesn't work. And so I thought, man, we have to teach people to change out a toilet. And I had to, luckily I can call my brother, and he's like, it's really easy to do. This is what you're going to do. And I changed out the toilet, and it wasn't that difficult.
You did?
I did, yeah.
Wow.
Absolutely.
That means.
So it's very easy then. That's what she was about to say. But anyway, just those little, what I would consider true life skills. And like we're trying to help people become the ultimate caregivers, and we are always talking about the repositioning caring, that caring actually is beautiful. And it frankly is beautiful when you're not intimidated,
right?
And not overwhelmed. Obviously, when you're caring for somebody all by yourself, it's tough.
Yeah.
But as a team, it's not.
It is very tough.
Yeah.
But I do want to go back and say, I know is it TriTech?
Yeah.
TriTech is, they used to offer the CNA program for students.
Right.
And I don't know if they've stopped that and they're just offering the HCA now. I'm not sure, but I know that they are doing, or maybe they're doing both.
Well, some of them are available, and I get that.
But it's
I'm saying,
you're saying all education.
Yeah, I'm saying like a freshman, like we used to take, what was those stupid classes we take? Like home ec, what was it called? Home ec?
Yeah.
Everyone
those life skill classes.
I say stupid, but I shouldn't say that. But anyway, you and I both went to Kamaikan, so
we did.
No, but anyway, the point I was trying to get at is that in those kind of classes, having straight across the board, people learning some of these caring things would be a dream in the future. But now we have it available in HomeTeams.
I think that's super awesome that we'll be able to support people that, like I'm told, it throws it at you. You have no control.
That's true. I'm just curious. I mean, because you mentioned both avenues. Are you seeing a fairly high percentage of family members who are in the position of, I want to either be prepared or I'm all of a sudden thrown into it and I need to know this? Or is it mostly people who are doing it as a profession?
So the people that I see, the people that I know, I try to encourage people to be prepared. Maybe it's because I'm getting to that age too, where you never know what's going to happen, right? But more people aren't, then they really rely on other people to come in, or facilities or something like that.
Okay.
And there's a lot of, and this is kind of the sad part, because I do have an adult family home as well. And, we look for staff, and I am willing to train them for free. They can get free training. They can get their certificates. They can get all of that. But there's not a huge interest. I mean, there's just like,
I don't think people know.
I was going to say, I think it's a
I don't think
lack
they
of
know.
not knowing. So if somebody was going to go down this route, I mean, you talked about, well, I know what I do in my program. Is there a certain curriculum that's required to be able to get this certification?
yeah. So the state of Washington has defined the whole curriculum. So you have a 40-hour core.
Okay.
You have a 5-hour, what they call orientation and safety. And that orientation and safety basically talks about, like bloodborne pathogens, different diseases, viruses, anything bloodborne. It also talks about safety for yourself and for your clients. So it's just kind of 5 hours of that. And then you have the 40-hour core. Then you have, which includes 16 hours of skills. And then they say you have to do something population specific to the populations out there. Well, I have chose dementia and mental health because we are seeing, I was just doing a dementia class yesterday, and by 2050, they project about 140,000 people will have dementia in Washington. I believe it was alone.
New people.
New people. I was going to say on top of.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's what I'm saying, is new people every year.
So then when you're done with that, is there like an exam that you have to take?
Yep. So they have to take, for like the mental health dementia, they have to take an exam. For the other courses, they do not have to take an exam through me. What they have to do, though, is they have to apply through the state. They do an application for an HCA application. They submit all of their certifications that they've obtained. Then they are processed through the state. Then they go from there to a company called Prometrics that must have a contract with the state of Washington to do the written computer. It's on a computer test.
Mm-hmm.
And then they go and do a skills evaluation with a state-approved evaluator, where they have to perform 5 skill sets. They have to do hand washing is one of them, gloves, donning gloves is another one, and then they have to do 3 other skills as decided by the evaluator. If they do those successfully, to demonstrate that they know how to perform them, assure that there's no cross-contamination, any of those kind of things, and they're given their pass on their test, and then they can become certified as home care aides.
I think, speaking a little bit to the fact that you're saying that you offer this and people don't take it, it is, like when I, again, interviewing like over 1,000 people, it's interesting. So I asked what they're going to do. You go through different stages, but one of the stages I get to is I say, okay, what are you going to do when grandpa is struggling? And it's like I can't even remember the percentage. I want to say 80-85% will say, well, I'm going to put him in a home. It's the automatic, what we think in America is just like they get to the stage, then put them out there. And you and I both know there's great homes and there's great situations, and they're part of the win, if you will. But at the same time, a lot of these people can't afford it. They don't understand how to afford it. They don't understand how to use Medicare, what facilities they can go to, and then and we believe HomeTeams actually even still helps in that situation. You don't realize when they go to a home, they still need their family. They still need contact. They still need people around. And a lot of people think it's literally like I dropped them off at the door and I'm out. And it's not because they're mean. It's because they don't understand and they're scared. And a lot of us, when we get scared, we just pull back. But my point being is that it's like they're all walking towards this cliff, and they don't realize this cliff is happening. And in your kind of program and in this kind of education, you could have learned a lot way back here. And if you delay a person going in a home by a year, let alone 2, 3, 4 years, when I came here, mom and dad were ready to go home. They thought they were. That's what mom had told me when I came here. And we were able to keep them home for 5, 6 years. And then we actually kept them home all the way through. But my point is, even if we couldn't have, because there's times where a person should go in a home, but we were able to keep them all that period of time. You add that up financially, you add that up just emotionally, and what it does to the person that has to go in a home prematurely, those kind of situations. But again, it's that lack of knowledge, of understanding that, like when you describe the classes, of course, I'm a person who always hated classes. So as soon as you say class, you start talking about tests, I start thinking hard. This is going to be very difficult. It's not that difficult. It's actually pretty simple skills to learn. It's not like, I don't want people out there to think, man, 40 hours. And it's funny how people do. They go 40 hours and 75 hours, and then I have to take this test, and it's on a computer. Oh, geez. A whole bunch of people get scared at that. It's not that difficult. It's something that almost anybody can accomplish if they want to do it.
Well, and it's applicable information that people can relate to. I mean, washing hands, these are things like you do as a human being already. Right. Now you're just applying to somebody. And I think that if they can take it and think of it as more of a functional skill, I think it's not as intimidating.
I have a question, though. Now, the one you refer to is ACH?
HCH, Home Care Aide.
Is that something that in certain situations can be covered by Medicare?
Yeah, they can be covered by, if you have in-home support, if you need somebody to come into your home, Medicaid, not Medicare, but Medicaid will cover if they're eligible. That's kind of the other piece of the pie, Do I have too much money?
Right.
Because if I have too much money, nothing's going to cover that support.
Right.
It's going to be all out of pocket. And that honestly is where HomeTeams is like.
That's the spot.
Because it can cost. Because when Ken first came home from his situation and we kind of settled in, I had a home care agency provide me with a caregiver. Not because I couldn't do it. It was Tammy still needs to work.
Right.
And I have such a wonderful family, but I wanted them to not feel obligated to help me 5 days a week, right? So it's like, okay, so I'm going to bring somebody in. And I mean, you're going to pay $40-some an hour for somebody to come in and do that.
Right.
And
it's rough.
It will break. I mean,
breaks you.
It breaks
anybody.
you. Financially, and I'm not bad. I mean,
no.
If you got the money to do it,
right.
you can absolutely do that. or whatever you feel. But so I'm not trying to say that they're not important. But it is expense. There's an expense there that I couldn't afford more than 7.5 to 8 hours one day a week. Right. It was just.
Well, that's what you used a term there, and I think it's misused. Is that we say because you have too much money to not get on Medicaid. Too much money, you're going. There's this spot there. It's like it's not even close to have enough money, let alone too much money, but you can't get Medicaid, and then you're in this spot. And that spot is huge. And that can be for numerous reasons, different types of illnesses, different situations. As you know, I mean, you know more than I do, but if it's memory, if they're actually having, true dementia, you're talking $12,000 at least. At least, and it can go up from there a month. And then when families start looking at that, they're going, wait 1 second. But I can't afford that, but I'm not making a little enough to be on Medicaid. And it's just this big old window spot there. And that is where HomeTeams comes in. And and that's why we have to, that's what when I was down at UCSD and I was talking to some of those guys down there, I was saying, they're like, well, this is what this is how the system's set up. There's these kind of people that can really help, and there's different things that the hospitals can do and what have you. And I'm like, you're not quite getting it because there's this triage area. There's this spot where people can't get that kind of help. They can't afford that person. Well, they have to take care of them.
Mm-hmm.
They can't go into this other kind of facility because they can't get in a Medicaid facility. And all of a sudden they're in this spot, and that little gap area is not a little gap, it's a big gap. And now we have to figure a way. So it's like, same with like talking to our EMT partners. Sometimes they can't get to an EMT. Sometimes they can't get to a hospital. They can't get to emergency rooms. And then when they get to an emergency room, they're there for 12 hours and never get seen. And that does happen a lot. I have one lady that has gone 6 times in the last couple months and 1 time got seen. So these gaps. So then we come down to triage. That's what I call triage, is that we have to take care of these people, and we have to educate in HomeTeams. We have to educate people how can you do it, because you're not going to be able to get that help. And then it starts to become affordable because you have a whole team working on it. It's not just Tammy by herself trying to figure it out. And like you said, sometimes it's hefty just on a family. That's why it's a community. It has to be a team. It has to be more than just a family. And family you live way out in the country. It's like all of a sudden you go like, why am I living way out in the country? But it's true. You're in a situation where they're not readily available. My brother in Seattle, he wants to help all he can. He's 3.5 hours away.
Right.
So you have to pull that team together.
Tammy, it has been awesome kind of hearing what impact you're making on the community. You are the embodiment of our caring is the cause. So what led you to that? What led you to what you're doing right now? What's your story?
Well, it's kind of, being a nurse is not my first career. Being a nurse actually is my second career. So I'm kind of fortunate because, when you work at places and it's not really a job, the job,
right?
And you actually love what you do. Well,
I do.
I love my first job. I absolutely love what I did. Got a lot of experience. Did kind of like, I wasn't a project manager, but I was in procurement and scheduling. So you kind of learn to manage people and manage things around pretty well.
Right.
And it was just time. It was time to leave that. Interesting enough, my mother-in-law was sick, and so she came to stay with me and my husband out in the country. And that was my first experience of no experience, if I can say it. It's like, here's this little lady. She was ambulatory, but I didn't know how to manage her for anything. Whether if she would have, something major would have, no, I was like that person that just walked off of the cliff, right? And so sadly, she ended up having a major issue, and she ended up passing away. But it was really after that, that September, I'll never forget this. Ken and I we were on our way to Priest Lake, Idaho, and I'm sitting there in Priest Lake, and I go, you know what? I think I want to be a nurse. And he goes, okay. I go, yeah. I go, if I can take care of my mother-in-law, which I didn't do well, but it was that experience. Right. If I can manage her, because she was like whole 4'11" and just feisty as all get out. She had a German personality, like, I can handle this. I can do this. And even though I didn't know what I was doing, I think by nature, it's in my heart, right. To do that. Anyway, so I went and decided to do that. It took 2.5 years to get all the prereqs, and then nursing school became an option because you have to apply. And so I was able to actually make a decision because I was accepted both in Walla Walla and at CBC. So I was able to make a decision. So went to CBC, went through really a very awesome nursing program. I did everything. I did the CNA first because I went, well, if I don't get nursing school, I will at least have a CNA to be able to work, right, as I'm waiting. So I had that certificate, and then I got into nursing school. Then in the summer, I went, well, I'm going to go sit for my LPN boards, because if life happens and I can't finish my last year of school,
Sure.
then at least I have an LPN
Right.
certificate that I can work with until, because you never know,
you
right?
don't.
You
That's
never
true.
know. So I did that, and then I worked in a dementia facility while I was, going through school during then. And then I finished my last year, got done with that. I knew I wanted to be a nurse practitioner, and I really thought I wanted to be the baby one.
Well,
Right.
Then I said no.
yeah.
And then my passion truly became geriatrics. So geriatrics have really been my passion from probably after I got out of nursing school. I worked at the Cadillac rehab facility at the rehab unit. And today I don't know if they still have that there or not. I think they do. I don't know why they wouldn't, but it was the inpatient rehab. So we had, cardiac, post-cardiac. We had people post-stroke, Guillain-Barré. I mean, it was just a variety of things. So we got to work with them. Physical therapy, worked with them, speech. So I kind of got introduced to that. And then, of course, with that, when there's not enough people, they float you kind of all over the place. So I got just a little flavor of everything. And then from there, I went into case management. And, well, actually, sorry, let me take that a step. I went from there. I said, okay, I'm going to go into my bachelor's now. So I wanted to get my bachelor's. So I went through WSU and got my bachelor's, and I was doing that. I was working in the rehab, but then I transitioned. Then from there into, after I got done with all that, I went into home health nursing. So I know some people, home health nursing, but what I will tell you, it was my most favorite job in the world. So the one thing about home health nurses that I think they don't get credit for, and you have to love people a lot, which I mean, nurses do love people, but I mean, this is like a little different.
A little more, yeah.
Because we get to go into your home where you live. We have autonomy to kind of, we're the only ones, right? There's not a doctor there to help us right at that time. So if there's a crisis or emergency, we have to be able to recognize that, make those decisions on what's next. But we get to go into the home. We get to evaluate the home. We get to see, are they safe in their home? Are there tools they need at their home? All those things that honestly, I feel like every hospital should do before they discharge a person.
Right.
And interesting enough, I did have that vision at one time, and I did make a proposal to a hospital. Can I be that nurse? Particularly if you have people that come out within a couple days, they come back and forth. Why are they doing that, right? So anyway, that was where my love for the geriatrics started. And then from there, I went into hospitalist nurse coordinator, help coordinate discharges, understand the hiccups and discharges. And my goal was always to have one where they never came back, even if it meant me personally driving to get meds and bringing them to the hospital so they could have them on discharge, because maybe they didn't. So for me, I'm not a money saver for a hospital. Let me just tell you that. I'm not that, because for me, my heart just went a little bit, maybe too much. They might call that professional boundary crossing, but that's I don't want them to come. It's not good for them to keep coming back and forth.
No.
Right.
We want them to go home and be settled, right? And so when I did home health, I realized that they were happier in their homes.
Right.
Recovery was better. And we just needed to make sure they had the proper tools and support to be able to have that, that healing environment, right? And so that was where, and from there, it just kind of went, and then opened an adult family home. Have a lot of friends and family and people that call me, and I'm not afraid to give them advice, or I'm not afraid to, no, you can't, they can't do that. You got to talk to them about that. No, you need to tell them that, so I get super passionate about what I do.
Very passionate.
And, almost maybe people might say I'm kind of aggressive like a bulldog sometimes, but you know what?
People need a bulldog
Let-
sometimes,
Yeah,
though.
they do.
Let's one of the professionals that work in the hospitals love once. I can guarantee you they're going to bulldog for that person.
Right.
And we should be bulldogging for every citizen that we deal with and
Absolutely.
interface.
I can see now why you're so well versed in what you do. That is a lot,
That is a
Tammy.
lot.
That's a lot of diversity. And I kind of would have loved to have seen you as the baby delivery. I think you would have been fun at that too. But I think you're in the perfect fit too. I mean, it's obvious that you're very passionate about it and you're so knowledgeable. And obviously you've helped Steve out and several other people that we work with, with advice and different things. So
It's funny. I talked to, we have our counselor here, so she's kind of my counselor. And we were joking about the fact that, there's always these kind of personality disorders, that especially nowadays, everybody's got some kind of, but ours is codependency. And, we don't have the other ones. We have codependency. But we were talking about it, it's a controlled codependency.
Right.
It's like, we do want to care more. And like I've always said is that I want us to err on the side of caring too much versus caring not enough.
Right.
And that does have a tendency. You have to be very careful because there is some codependency. There is some emotional drains that can really wreak havoc on you. And so you have to control it. And you have to understand the boundaries. And you have to set, and you've said that before to me many times, you have to set those boundaries and you have to kind of live by those boundaries. But that is where we want to err. We want to err on caring more. And you would hope there are people who want to bulldog a little bit harder, a little bit more in the kind of patient advocacy side of caring. And yeah, it is true though. It's like, I was talking to my mom about that because we were talking about our, problems in our personalities because my mom was a very strong codependent and, but she controlled it and she always did a great job. But that side of our personality is a side that I think we can be proud of.
So, Tammy, I kind of want to dive in just a little bit. You kept saying you never know. You never know what could happen in life. You should be prepared to some degree. And you briefly mentioned Ken.
Yeah.
I'd love it if you could kind of share your own personal experience of that. You never know what can happen.
Sure. So, so my husband and I been married for a long time, 40-some years. We had a great, fun marriage, and we were very active, did a lot of fun things, boating, camping, all those good things. And then in March of 21, he went fishing, came home, kind of said he was cold, thought maybe because he went up to Banks Lake. And so I thought maybe he got cold, and there was that virus going around. Anyway, so that was like on a Thursday or Friday. And then I thought he was doing better, but, anyway, by the following Wednesday, I wake up actually Thursday at 3 a.m., only to find my hubby not where I would expect him to be. We had fallen asleep, actually, watching a TV, one of my favorite shows called The Midwives, by the way. Plug. Baby deliveries. Anyway, it's a great show. But he wasn't where we had I was in he was in the recliner and I was sitting on the left seat and I couldn't find him anywhere. So I went, well, this is kind of odd. It is March. Can't imagine him going scouting. Can't imagine a lot of things, but I looked, honestly, around my house. I went in the bedroom, went in the bathroom, I even went out in the garage thinking maybe he was looking for something out in the garage. Because Ken would wake up, oddly enough, he's a guy that would wake up by 4:30 or 5. He was just one of those guys who went to bed early, early to bed, early to rise guy. Anyway, I swear it seemed like forever, but it probably was only like 5 minutes. So I was like starting to get kind of frustrated and like, where the heck is he? So I calmed myself, took a deep breath, and said, okay, let me retrace everything again. Back to the bedroom, back to the spare room, because I maybe didn't sleep well. Then I went back into the utility room, and this time I turned on the light in the utility room. I had relied on the light from the kitchen,
Right.
Because how could you miss a man, right? when I turned that light on, I found my husband on the floor in the bathroom. And when I saw him laying there, I knew exactly what happened. He was kind of wedged between the toilet and the wall, space about like that. And I said, Ken, and he looked at me, couldn't move his arm, so I knew he had had a stroke right away. Now, mind you, we live out in the country, and so I got on the phone, called 911, and they started asking me these questions, which I actually was kind of rude and irritated because it's like, I already know what he had, so can we get some help here right away? You know, well, you know, it is all voluntary out there at ambulance service, so it took a bit for them to get there. And I did tell him, he heard me, and I said, Ken, you had a stroke. I said, so I pulled him, wedged him out, pulled him and set him out and got a pillow, kept him covered. And anyway, we ended up getting him finally to the hospital, and yeah, he had a stroke. So they ended up flying him to Spokane because there's a procedure called TPA where they can go and do what they call clot busting. And the time had lapsed. It has to be done within a window of time. And because I don't really know when he was normal, what they would call normal, what I do know is him and I had a conversation about 11:30, and we were conversing. So that's when that's when he was normalized, right? Anyway, so then they flew him up to Spokane. And then they were going to try to go in and do another procedure where they maybe could retrieve the clot, but they couldn't do that either. The risk was greater than the benefit. So we just had to leave the clot, let the stroke evolve. And of course, when we talk about evolution, we're talking about the damaged and the brain pressure gets higher, right? And the damaged area kind of gets bigger until the pressure stops too. And so, never know what's going to happen, right? But I got to put all my little skills together.
Yeah.
So put all my skills to work, and, you know, they try. And I'm going to be honest, they tried to kind of pull some stuff. And I'm like, no, I know I've done this, so you're not going to do this. And he needs family. So if you want to send him to where I think they wanted to send him Post Falls or something like that. And I'm not saying it's not a good place, but this was also during COVID where they would not let anybody in there.
Right.
Anybody in the place.
Wow.
Period. End of story. And I said, absolutely not. He needs, right now,
family.
He's been in ICU and in that hospital, and you wouldn't let me step foot beyond the entry door. So I haven't seen him except by Zoom. He needs his family. No way. So let's find someplace else. And I really want inpatient rehab. I don't want him to go to a skilled nursing facility. And I'm not trying to badmouth anything, so please don't. I don't want anybody to take this. But if you go into an inpatient rehab, well, first of all, it's covered differently. It's covered by your Medicare as a hospitalization. And they get, in my opinion, more therapy, way more therapy. So, and he got a lot of therapy. And so we ended up finding Wenatchee, Confluence there. It was Confluence Health. So he went to Wenatchee, and he was there for about 20 some days. And they were super amazing. So I'd recommend that place to anybody. I know it's not a short drive, but they were phenomenal. And they even have like the exoskeleton, which we didn't get to use there at that time because it was being maintenance, but they have a skeleton you can put on to try to get them to start that walk.
Movement, yeah.
And then from there, when he got done with that, they said, okay, he's ready to go to, skilled nursing. You want to send him these way? I said, no. So what else do you got for me? Because let's try a swing bed, maybe, or something like that. Well, then they ended up sending him to Leavenworth. They have a swing bed there, facility there. Amazing care again. So from Wenatchee to Leavenworth, I was I was so blessed, and so was he, to have the kind of care and support that he had. So when it was time for him to go, we were fairly prepared. So we had kind of done about 8 years prior, we started already looking, like, we had these conversations. We were going to I said, okay, if we're going to redo the bathroom and take this oversized, sorry, garden tubs to me are oversized laundry couches, right? So we literally made a conscious effort to start looking at making our home, at least the bathroom at that time, accessible in case either of us ever
Had problems, yeah.
had a problem. So the bathroom was already where it needed to be, which was important, lacking a grab bar, so.
Which is easy to add in there.
Which was easy to add. So the bathroom was good, and then I had an army of wonderful, a neighbor that is a farmer. His name's Denny. He got, oh man, I'll probably start crying if I think about it, but he just took charge for me. Came in, where we lived, everything was gravel, so the wheelchair wouldn't work on gravel. Had no ramps going into the steps, so he built the ramp. He took control and got the contractors and did everything for the concrete that needed to be done, so Ken so we could get him out and manage him well on in the wheelchair. We had a ramp to get him into the house. We had some safety concerns around the house because we kind of our house is kind of elevated like this, and there was like a cliff there. So I didn't want him, because he lost part of his vision.
Right.
So I didn't want him to go over the edge. So we got some safety rails put up and pulled anything that would obstruct him from having free access to his home. Because the one thing he kept saying is, I want to go home. I want to go home.
Sure.
That was his place. That he loved where
it's his
we
comfort
lived.
zone.
It was his place. And so, of course, my thing was to be able to do that. And so I had a room. I don't know. I had a few rooms. We live in a modest triple wide manufactured home. Had this room, didn't even really care what it was, but I got bars for him to be able to work on therapy, made it all open for him. I put a microwave in there so maybe he could learn with occupational therapy how to use a microwave, how to open that. Anything I could think of that could be speech, occupational, and physical, I tried to introduce back into the house so that he would be able to try to relearn and progress is what I did. And so when he was ready to come home, the therapist at that place wanted to know everything that was in the home, which is what I was saying earlier. It was so nice to have that. So I had to go and take pictures and show him everything where they were assured that he could safely come home and be managed. And if it wasn't for my village that helped get the outside ready, but if it wasn't for my skills that I knew, I would never have brought my husband home, because he needs to be transferred, needed the wheelchair. There was everything that would have scared me to death.
Right.
But because I knew, no brainer. And so he has been able, of course, with the help of my family, to, stay with him, be with him when I work. He's been able to be home and still enjoy his space.
Thanks for sharing with us. My favorite thing about that is that fits in perfectly toward what we consider our war cry, which is the community building, right? It's the home team. You literally checked every box that we're like, you know what? I think people need community. They need that team. You mentioned, the farmer Denny coming over and helping with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And you mentioned all these people that helped, but your skill set, a lot of, yes, nobody needs to have as much knowledge as you have. It's the basics, right? It's the how to transfer, how to love, how to care for somebody. And I think by having home teams and having that resource, it's just such a drastic change for people.
Yeah.
And everybody wants to go home.
Everybody does.
It's so interesting. It's like, I don't think we really start to, it's like life, right? You don't really know what you miss until you're missing it. But at home, you get people out there, and of course, me, I don't know what you guys are going to do when I say, but I want to go to Hawaii. No.
I'm going to say have fun, unless I get a house there too.
No, I want to go home. Everybody wants to go home. It's just the way it is. And it's a beautiful thing when you can, that's why we actually changed the name to HomeTeams because
of the team.
it's where people want to be.
They do want to be, and that's really where the healing starts. I mean, if you think about, I mean, with him, it wasn't even for him totally just the physical aspect. It is, I mean, definitely that is a barrier. But even there's cognitive changes.
Yeah.
And so when somebody's going through some cognitive changes, the last thing you want to do is kind of remove them from everything that they know and love and is familiar. So, you know, coming home was really, I mean, it was, I mean, from my perspective, it was the only option that was going to happen. You know, I mean, even if I didn't work, I guess that would be life, you know.
Right.
But that was how it was going to be. But, you know, on the other side of that too, you know, working is my mental health too, as is tennis, by the way, which all started thanks to the regeneration therapy, because Ken started the regeneration therapy literally within 2 weeks after he got home from Leavenworth. And so once he started that, you know, that was kind of my avenue to figuring my mental health, because caregiving is demanding. Not just, I mean, physically, it's really probably not as much as it is emotional, particularly when you're dealing with, you know, when you have your family, somebody you love, right? You don't want to say no. You don't, you know, you're there, and it's. I mean, just kind of imagine yourself
huge
being there all the time for that support, and you're their emotional support too. So
and you have to, you know, and that's the thing we try to really emphasize is that as soon as you find out, I mean, this is the kind of repositioning of caring, and again, we're doing a pretty good job of it. We're going to do better and better all the time, but we learn, you know, like you and I've talked about before, the caring is the best thing you ever get to do in your life if it's not overwhelming. And trying to get a person in a position where they have a team so they're not overwhelmed. But yes, it's a beautiful time of your life. And it's like I was talking to a lady yesterday and she was saying, you know, what's going on with her husband. And I said, this is the greatest time of your life. And she goes, well, how do you know that? I go, well, first of all, let's start with this is your only time in your life. I mean, so you can go one way or the other. You can make it really miserable, or you can say, no, I'm going to enjoy every second of this. And so you start there, but it also it's a wonderful time to get to be close to each other and whatever. But you have to start and say, okay, like in your situation, you're going, okay, we got to help Ken get better. But you got to help Tammy get better. Tammy's got to get stronger, and Tammy needs the breaks, and she needs the things that rejuvenate her emotionally and physically and spiritually.
And the support.
Yeah, and the support. So it's like, yeah, you're starting a new battle. You just found out your wife has cancer, whatever it is. Starting a new battle, but it's your battle too. And so you got to get healthy and you got to focus on that and you and I know we see it happen all the time. A caregiver who actually goes down before the person they're caring for because there's so much on them. So do you want to care for this person? You got to get healthy. What are you doing with your diet? What are you doing to get your sleep? What are you doing to play tennis? You know, we at the clinic, we always talk about play hard and live well. It's just true. If you're not getting a chance to make sure you're rejuvenating through play, you're not gonna be able to care for the person the way you want to.
And a play isn't the same for everybody,
No,
right? No. You know, whatever
I hate
that
tennis.
is.
And you're not very good.
You know, so it's whatever, you know, makes you whatever honestly, whatever renews you. Yeah, that's really what it is. And for some people it may not even be something totally physically active.
It may be a walk,
it may be
reading a book.
It may be books, it may be what is it, quilting or crocheting. It could be something different, but that is a very important aspect of the whole care piece. And even like with HomeTeams, you know, have them come, have your friend come and sit with them. Yeah. So you can go and have your, you know, your rejuvenation. So you're healthier mentally coming back.
Absolutely.
To support the people you love.
I agree.
Yeah.
Well, Tammy, thanks for sharing all your expertise and your personal stories. It's been really fun to learn more about you.
No problem.
Well, thanks for joining us for another episode of HomeTeams. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Spotify so you don't miss an episode.